There are men who spend years believing that life took away their strength, when in reality, they were the ones who stopped using it. The greatest loss of strength almost never begins in the body. It starts the moment someone stops fighting for themselves. There is a silent danger in living without challenging your own will. Little by little, you stop realizing what you are still capable of. You wake up without energy, your mind starts to wander, your body feels heavy, and your soul drifts without direction. Little by little, you get used to that state and begin to believe that living with your light dimmed is simply part of adulthood, as if the absence of enthusiasm were an unavoidable destiny. But it isn't. It never was. The problem is that the modern world has made you forget a truth that has always existed. The body and the mind move together. Whatever happens to one will inevitably transform the other. That is why a mind that gives up weakens the body, and a neglected body weakens the mind even more. A dangerous cycle begins because it doesn't destroy you all at once. It simply drains your intensity until you no longer notice what you've lost. There are people who spend years without embracing a single voluntary challenge. They run from effort, avoid discomfort, and keep postponing their own commitments. I'll start on Monday. When I'm feeling better, when I have more time. As those promises pile up, something inside them begins to fade. Not only their physical strength, but also their discipline, their courage, and their ability to endure. The body keeps track of everything, every excuse, every delay, every habit repeated in silence. There is a simple law that very few people accept because it demands responsibility. Everything you repeat is shaping the person you are becoming. There is no neutral ground. Every single day, your body learns whether you are someone who backs away or someone who stands firm. That is why physical exercise carries a meaning far greater than muscles, aesthetics, or appearance. It is a daily reminder that you are still capable of overcoming your own resistance. The Stoics understood this deeply. Training the body was a way of strengthening the spirit. Epictetus taught that true freedom is born from mastering yourself. Seneca warned that those who avoid every discomfort eventually become prisoners of their own limitations. And it makes perfect sense. The person who runs from effort also begins to run from the strongest version of themselves they could become. Every workout is a silent conversation with your own conscience. Every repetition sends a clear message. I am still in command of this life. Your breathing changes, your posture changes, your gaze changes. Because there is a kind of strength that only awakens when your will becomes stronger than your comfort. And when that strength awakens, you realize that you were never tired of life. You had simply drifted away from the person you were born to become. Before we move on to the next lesson, leave this in the comments. Today, I choose to trust myself again. There are defeats that happen long before any visible failure. They begin the moment a man stops governing his own body and, without realizing it, hands over control of his own mind as well. The greatest prison is not built from walls, but from habits that slowly weaken the will until freedom itself feels like too much effort. Every human decline begins the moment comfort gains more authority than purpose. The modern world has managed to sell you a sophisticated lie. It has convinced you that the body and the mind are separate territories, that what happens to one never reaches the other, that you can neglect one while keeping the other completely intact. It is one of the most dangerous illusions humanity has ever accepted, because when a man abandons his own body, he rarely realizes that he is also abandoning, at the very same time, his ability to endure. The truth is ancient and brutal. Body and spirit have never been separate, never. What you do to one either elevates or diminishes the other. There is no middle ground, there is no neutral territory between them. Think about that for a moment. A defeated mind creates a weak body, and a weak body feeds an even more fearful mind. It is a cycle that turns in silence day after day without making a sound, without warning you. That is exactly why it is so dangerous. It does not destroy you all at once. It lulls you into complacency, convincing you that this is normal, that the exhaustion you feel is simply life and has nothing to do with the surrender of your own body. You have seen this happen to someone, and maybe you have even felt it within yourself. When physical effort is abandoned, difficult decisions begin to be avoided as well. A slouched posture is not merely muscular, it is the body communicating what the mind has already accepted. Shallow breathing is not merely physical, it is the rhythm of someone who has learned to exist with less. Eyes without light are not simply tired, they reveal the absence of a man who has stopped demanding more from himself. The Stoics understood this long before science could translate it into numbers. A sound mind in a sound body. It is not wellness advice, it is a law that the Stoics did not merely teach, but lived with a seriousness that puts the modern man to shame. To them, caring for the body was a philosophical act. It was the most concrete way to prove that you still ruled yourself. Epictetus lived as a slave, and yet became one of the freest men who ever lived. He spoke of self-control as the only true freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to refuse being dragged around by whatever you happen to feel in the moment. And that freedom begins in the body, in the breath you choose to control, in the effort you refuse to avoid, in the weight you decide to lift when no one is watching. Science has arrived at exactly the same place the Stoics reached centuries ago. When you train, it is not only your muscles that change, it is the very architecture of your brain. The hormone that leaves you frozen under pressure retreats. The one that fuels determination moves forward. You are not simply strengthening your body. You are rebuilding from the inside out your ability to think clearly, make firm decisions, and keep going when everything inside you is telling you to stop. When you lift your body, your mind rises with it. When you take a deep breath, your thoughts become clearer. When you demand more of yourself physically, the courage that seemed lost begins to return. The same cycle that tears you down is the cycle that lifts you up. The only thing that changes is who is in control. That is why the body has never been merely the vehicle of the mind. It is part of the mind itself. To treat it as secondary is to amputate your own ability to think, decide, and persevere. The man who understands this law no longer trains out of vanity. He trains because he has understood an unforgiving truth. Every time he gives in to comfort, he loses a piece of his inner authority. And every time he moves forward when things are difficult, he recovers something that mediocrity had been quietly taking away, day after day. This is not philosophy confined to the page. It is the oldest and most ignored law of human existence, and it is not demanding anything from you, it is waiting for you, ready to answer at the exact moment you decide to respect it once again. The only question is this: how much longer are you going to keep putting off that reunion with yourself? Write in the comments where you feel you most need to start respecting yourself again, and subscribe, because what comes next dives even deeper into that very path. Part 2. Every comfort has a price. Every repeated convenience weakens a part of you that one day will become indispensable. Strength does not disappear all at once. It leaves in silence every time you choose the easier path when you were capable of enduring the harder one. The person who turns comfort into a way of life without realizing it turns their own fragility into their destiny. A human being is not shaped by the days when everything goes right, but by the moments they decide to keep going, when everything inside them is begging them to stop. Every pain you choose to endure on purpose is turning you into someone life cannot break. But that ability is the exact opposite of what the world has taught you. The world taught you to run from discomfort as if it were the enemy, to treat every effort as a problem to eliminate, every hardship as a flaw in the system. And every day it makes you the same silent promise, wrapped in convenience, in speed, in endless entertainment, that you can have everything without paying anything. Pleasure without effort, results without discomfort, a life without struggle. It is the greatest lie ever sold, because comfort does not charge you at the entrance. It charges interest over the years, in the only currency you can never earn back, your willpower. You pay without noticing, installment after installment, until the day life asks something of you and the entire bill comes due all at once. The man who avoids every hardship does not stay where he is. He falls behind. Every escape makes him a little smaller, a little weaker, a little farther from the person he could have become. But the man who faces discomfort head-on does not stay still either. He grows. The same law that destroys one person builds another. And every single day, in the moment your body tells you to step back and you answer, "Not today," you decide which side of that law you will live on. Think about how fair that is. Life never asked you to be born strong. It only asked you to choose over and over again the path that builds strength. And that path is available to anyone at any moment, regardless of where they started. John Chrysostom, a Greek philosopher and theologian of the 4th century, saw this with brutal clarity. He realized that constant luxury makes pain seem greater and pleasure seem smaller, that the person who never faces hardship loses, at the same time, both the ability to endure suffering and the ability to experience genuine joy. The discomfort you avoid to protect yourself is exactly what gives you access to the fullness of life. The sweat after a workout, the meal after hunger, the rest after hard work. The relief that exists only because effort came first. The person who runs from pain does not live without pain. They live without depth. They experience everything only halfway. Food no longer tastes the same. Victory no longer carries the same weight. Rest no longer feels as sweet. Everything becomes lukewarm. But the person who faces hardship head-on regains the ability to experience everything completely. You were not born for numbness. You were born for intensity. And it is waiting for you on the other side of the effort you have been postponing. Epictetus was direct. The man who runs from every discomfort becomes a slave to his own fears. Not because he was born weak, because he taught himself, repetition after repetition, that retreat is the answer. Every time fear appeared and he stepped back, fear learned that it was in control. And it kept growing, claiming more territory, until it started making decisions for him that he never would have chosen with a clear mind. But the same ability that learns to retreat can also learn to move forward. Your spirit can be trained. Everything within you responds to what you practice. And that means you are not condemned to remain the person comfort has made you into. At this very moment, you are whatever you are practicing. Your body hears everything. It hears every excuse, every surrender disguised as common sense. But listen to this. It hears every silent victory with the same attention. Every morning you got up without wanting to. Every extra set when your arms were burning. Every extra mile when your legs begged you to stop. Every time you kept going when quitting would have been so easy. And it gives all of that back to you. Not in words, but in the weight of your shoulders, in the steadiness of your gaze, in the presence that enters the room before you ever speak. People feel that difference before they can explain it. They recognize someone who paid the price. Life will become difficult. There are no exceptions. The storm always comes. It gives no warning, asks no permission, waits for no one to be ready. And when it arrives, it will not ask whether you are prepared. It will reveal who you became while no one was watching. The man who spent years negotiating with comfort will discover he has nothing in reserve. But the man who trained himself through discomfort will feel the weight and remain standing. That man can be you. He already is you every time you choose effort. So do not run from what burns. What burns is forging you. The fire that seems determined to destroy you is the very same fire that transforms raw iron into steel. Every repetition, every difficult morning, every refusal to step back becomes another layer of steel that no one will ever be able to take away from you. And unlike almost everything else in life, this is something no one can steal, no one can buy, and no one can build for you. That is the true cost of comfort. And it is also the true reward for the person who had the courage to pay the price of strength. Part 3. What training does to your mind. There is a force inside you that no gym can sell, no product can deliver, and no advertising campaign has ever had the courage to reveal. It has no filter, no perfect lighting. It doesn't fit inside a social media post. And yet, it is the most valuable thing physical exercise can ever give back to you. Because corporations sold you a smaller version of training, a version about appearance, about validation, about looking like someone for other people before you've become that person within yourself. Six-pack photos on social media, before and after transformations, one more product at the end of the video. That version is a beautifully decorated lie, and today you're going to discover the real one. Physical exercise has a power far deeper than any advertisement has ever dared to reveal. It is not about aesthetics. It is not about showing off. It is about something the ancients understood with a clarity that would embarrass the modern man. It is about reclaiming authority over yourself, and that authority is available to you the very next time you decide not to back down. The Stoics did not train their bodies out of vanity. They trained because they understood a truth that changes everything. Physical discipline is the training of the soul, not an activity that exists alongside philosophy. Philosophy itself, carried out through sweat, in the silence of someone who doesn't need an audience to do what is right. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the greatest empire on earth, woke up before sunrise. Not because someone forced him to, but because he knew that the first battle of the day was against himself, and that the man who wins that battle in the first hours carries a different kind of authority for the rest of the day. A presence that cannot be explained, only felt. And understand this: if the most powerful man of his time had to win that battle every single morning, then it is yours to win as well. Every day, starting today. Epictetus went even further. He taught that self-control is not just one virtue among many, it is the foundation of all virtues, and that the body is the first battlefield where that victory is earned. Not the last, the first, the place where you prove to yourself, before anything else, that you are capable of commanding yourself. Think about what that means in real life. Every workout is a silent and honest conversation with yourself. Every repetition is a question your spirit answers in real time. Are you still in control? When your muscles burn and your mind begs you to stop, something far greater than physical strength is being tested. It is your word. It is your ability to be the kind of man who keeps going when things get hard. And here is what changes everything. Every time you choose to continue, a message reaches the deepest part of your mind. Direct, without noise. It says, I can still trust myself. It sounds simple. It isn't. That sentence is the foundation of everything you build. There are men who spend decades unable to say it honestly. They make promises and break them. They get back up and then retreat. They slowly stop believing in themselves, and that is where the real erosion begins, not when the body grows weaker, but when faith in yourself falls apart. But that is exactly where the good news begins, because training interrupts that cycle. Not because it is magical, because it is real, Because it happens in the physical world, with weight, resistance, and genuine discomfort. And you were there, and you didn't walk away. That cannot be manufactured, it cannot be faked, it cannot be bought. It can only be earned, and once it is earned, it belongs to you forever. And you feel it. Your breathing changes, your eyes regain their sharpness, your posture realigns itself. Not because your muscles grew, but because your spirit remembered who is truly in charge. There is a wild strength that awakens only when the body stops obeying comfort and begins to bow before your will. It is not inherited, it is not genetic. It is built, one repetition at a time, in silence, without applause. And that means it was never reserved for other people. It is waiting for you to claim it. Because when that strength awakens, it doesn't stay in the gym. It carries over into your decisions, into your voice, into the way you face problems, into the way you present yourself to the world. The man who truly trains is not only training his body, he is training his relationship with difficulty, and that relationship defines everything he is capable of achieving. The strength is already within you. Training is simply the path that calls it out, and the first step on that path is yours to take, right now. Part 4. The pain that shapes you. There are pains that life imposes without asking for permission. The loss that came far too soon, the betrayal you could never have seen coming, the failure that happened even though you did everything right, the absence of someone who is never coming back. The past that cannot be rewritten, no matter how many times your mind replays the scene, searching for a different ending. Those are pains you did not choose, and there is no amount of effort, discipline, or philosophy that can erase what has already happened. Anyone who promises you that is lying. But there is something you can choose, a different kind of pain. A pain that does not come to destroy you, but to rebuild you. A pain that you call upon, that you control, that answers to your own will, the muscle that burns, the lungs that catch fire, the effort begging you to stop, and you decide to keep going. That pain is your choice, and that choice changes everything. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology would take centuries to confirm through research. The body carries what the mind cannot process. The pain you never found the words for, the resentment you swallowed in silence, the inner battles you never chose to face like a man, all of it has an address. It lives in the tension in your shoulders, in the tightness across your chest, in the shallow breathing of someone who has learned to survive with their guard up. You do not store pain in your memory. You store it in your body. And that is exactly why intense physical effort accomplishes something that no conversation can achieve on its own. When you truly train, your mind cannot run back to the past or drift toward an anxious future. There is only the weight, the barbell, your breath, and the damned present moment. It is the only time of day when you are forced to be completely here, without the story that wounded you, without the fear of what may still come. Just you, the effort, and the decision to keep going. In that state, something happens beneath the surface of your being. The anxiety you have been carrying finally finds a way out. The frustration that had nowhere to go dissolves through effort. The existential emptiness that once seemed permanent begins to lose its grip to a new presence, stronger, steadier, more real. Not because the past disappeared, but because you discovered that you can carry weight without falling apart. And that discovery changes the meaning of everything. To redefine your pain does not mean pretending it never hurt. It does not mean performing a strength you do not truly feel. It means looking at what happened and instead of allowing it to define the size of your life, deciding that it will define the direction of your strength. The pain you did not choose becomes the fuel for the pain you do choose. And the pain you choose gives back something that passive suffering never can. The feeling that you still have power over your own story. Marcus Aurelius lost children. He ruled an empire on the brink of collapse. He endured betrayal, war, and illness. And still, every morning, he wrote about the necessity of carrying on. Not because he did not feel pain, but because, through years of daily discipline, he had developed a relationship with suffering that did not destroy him. He knew he could not control what life sent his way. He knew he could control who he would become in response to it. Physical exercise is the most honest school for learning that skill. Every workout is a laboratory where you practice becoming greater than discomfort. It is where you train your ability to redefine your pain, to turn what hurts into fuel, what feels heavy into momentum, what once looked like a limit into a starting point. You do not go to the gym to forget what you have lived through. You go to become the kind of man who can carry what he has lived through without being destroyed by it. That is the healing the body offers, quiet, real, without promising to erase the past, but with the certainty that the past does not have to define who you are now. Part 5. The day a man truly dies. There is a kind of death that no one sees. One that never appears in an obituary, that has no scheduled date, that never gathers family around a bedside. A death that happens slowly, in silence, while a man is still breathing, still working, still smiling in photographs. It is the death of his will. It is not when the heart stops beating. It is when a man stops believing in himself. You know this man. Maybe you have been him. The one who promises to wake up earlier and hits the snooze button for the 3rd time, who swears he will start on Monday and somehow Friday arrives without him having started anything, who looks in the mirror and makes peace with his own mediocrity, convincing himself that tomorrow will be different, that when conditions improve, he will finally take action, that one day motivation will arrive with enough force to move what his will no longer can. This cycle has a name: betrayal, not by others, by yourself. Every broken promise leaves an invisible mark, not on your skin, not on your muscles, on the deepest structure of who you are. Over time, the man who keeps repeating this cycle stops making big promises because, somewhere deep inside, even if he never admits it out loud, he already knows he will not keep them. He shrinks his own dreams, so that the distance between what he promises and what he delivers becomes smaller, easier to live with, easier to justify. That is when the real death happens, not in one dramatic moment, but through a silent series of small surrenders that, added together, extinguish the fire of an entire man. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul takes on the color of its thoughts. Add this to it: character takes the shape of your daily rituals. Not your intentions, not your plans, your rituals. What you do when you are tired, what you choose when no one is watching, what you repeat in the darkness where no applause reaches you and no camera is recording. A man's life is not defined by his good intentions. It is defined by the relentless force of his daily habits. Your body never obeys what you promise. It records only what you execute, consistently, day after day, without exception. That should make you shudder, because it means that every wasted morning, every hour surrendered to digital numbness, every decision postponed is carving the person you are becoming. Quietly, without warning, with a mathematical precision that has no mercy for romantic ideals or good intentions. Epictetus was direct. No man becomes strong by accident. Strength does not appear in a moment of revelation. It is forged through repeated acts of relentless discipline. And the problem is that most men repeat, with that same mathematical precision, the very things that weaken them. They repeat distraction, they repeat excess, they repeat escape. And then, with astonishing audacity, they ask themselves why they feel empty, exhausted, and lost. The body has already understood what the mind refuses to accept. You become what you practice. If you practice surrender whenever you are tired, Your will grows weaker and returns multiplied as cowardice. If you practice physical discipline, your mind hardens like iron in the blacksmith's fire. Training is a sacred act because it forces you to look directly at your weakest point. That inner voice begging you to stop, that mind that bargains with effort, that creates excuses with the creativity of an artist, that finds 1,000 reasons why today should be the exception. Every time you decide to keep going beyond what that voice demands, you are not just training your muscles. You are refusing the silent death. You are choosing to stay truly alive. And that choice, made repetition after repetition in silence, without an audience, without applause, is what separates the men who transform themselves from those who spend their entire lives waiting for a miracle that never comes. Because the miracle never comes from the outside, it is built from within, one day at a time, one decision at a time, one repetition at a time. Part 6. Your reconstruction begins today. The moment has come when the words need to stop and the action needs to begin. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready, not when life gets calmer or motivation finally shows up with enough strength. Now, on the next repetition, on the next step, in the next moment when that weak voice inside you tells you to stop and you decide you won't. Reconstruction has no ceremony, it has no opening speech. It begins in the silence of someone who decided, without witnesses, without applause, to become different from who they were yesterday. There will be dark days. That's not a threat. It's honesty. Laziness will come back with full force. Comfort will present itself with reasonable arguments, with the calm voice of something that seems to be on your side. There will be mornings when the weight feels heavier than you are, weeks when progress is invisible, moments when you'll ask yourself if it's worth continuing. It is. Not because someone will applaud you, not because the results will show up quickly, but because every time you move forward, when everything inside you is begging you to retreat, you're building something no amount of money can buy, no relationship can give you, and no external circumstance can ever provide. The certainty that you can trust yourself. Seneca wrote that the person who perseveres in the good they have begun will become, sooner than they imagine, the person they wish to be. That's not a vague promise. It's a precise description of how transformation works. It doesn't arrive in a single day of revelation. It settles in slowly, built through rituals repeated in the darkness, with clenched teeth and steady feet standing at the edge of the abyss. Real transformation doesn't happen on the surface. It isn't found in the weight you lose, the muscle you gain, or the picture you post. It happens deep beneath the surface of who you are. It happens in the mind that erased the word surrender from its own vocabulary, in the iron will that remains standing when everything around it falls apart, in the eyes of a man who stopped negotiating with his own mediocrity. Many people begin by trying to improve their appearance, only to discover that the only thing they truly needed was to feel alive again, present again, whole again, with the certainty that they can carry the weight of their own problems without shattering like glass. That certainty isn't inherited. It can't be bought. It won't be found in a video, a book, or a powerful quote. It is built through silent repetition, with clenched teeth, standing firm in front of what is difficult. And once it takes root, it changes everything. The way you look at yourself in the mirror, the way you speak, the way you walk into a room, the way you face the things that once left you frozen. You're not lifting metal. You're raising your own existence out of the mud of oblivion. There is an inner fire that never goes out. It may be burning low right now. It may be almost invisible after so much time buried beneath comfort, distraction, and broken promises. But it's still there. And every time you choose what is difficult instead of what is easy, it grows, quietly, steadily, unshakably. This is the man you are rebuilding. Not the perfect man, not the man without flaws, the man who gets back up when he falls, who keeps going when that weak voice tells him to stop, who doesn't need perfect conditions to act because he has learned that conditions will never be perfect, and that action is the only honest response to that reality. Reconstruction begins with the next repetition. It has already begun. If this video reignited something inside you, don't stand still. Leave the word unshakable in the comments so I'll know who's still standing in the line of fire. Share this with a friend who needs to remember their own strength, and subscribe to Stoic House so you don't miss another dose of reality. Stay unshakable. Keep growing. The world needs the very best you have to offer.